Okay, it's recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AsyncAPI community meeting. I'm Łukasz, your host, and Fran is no longer a host, but he's still helping a lot. Today, we have 3 items on the agenda. We usually leave our items till the end. So I see that we already have guys from MicroRocks. So please accept my apologies, but we will go through those 2 topics that we already have on the agenda because I think they're pretty quick and the generator one is pretty important to handle. And I'm not sure how long you're gonna do the demo and how the discussion will evolve. So let's keep you for the end. And just before I start, so we have Laurent and, excuse me if I pronounce wrong, it's Yacine.
That's perfect.
Okay, awesome. So I know you're guys from MicroRocks, but before we start, we have also Colin Sullivan. Just to ask you if you're together or Colin, you're from different reason on the call. You have some important question you would prefer to ask before we start?
No questions. I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Colin Sullivan. I'm product manager of the NATS project. We've seen a lot of people that are really interested in NATS and AsyncAPI. So I just figured I'd join the call, learn a little bit more about AsyncAPI and kind of, just listen in for a while, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Awesome. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, agenda. So today we need to quickly discuss the topic of the generator, AsyncAPI generator. So it's just for you guys, if you don't know this project, it's a library that's powered by many features that allow us to generate documentation code. So it's I would say even a kind of framework for generating code. So you basically feed it with the AsyncAPI document, and then you can create templates where you define what kind of files should be generated, if it should be HTML or some code files. You just template them, and there's a bunch of features that come with generator, and it's already powering our AsyncAPI hub, the playground. Yeah, many people use it. And we are now in the stage of not yet major release. Over the last few weeks, it's pretty unstable. I'm introducing breaking changes all the time because we want to introduce finally the major release. And the question is, what do you think? So when I was thinking about this, introducing this release, maybe before the proposal, let me just show you. So the current situation is there are only 4 issues. The conditional files bug I'm already investigating. For the README, there's already pull request accepted by Fran. I'm just waiting today for Mark if he has some more questions and comments about it. Dummy like AsyncAPI document, that's already in progress. I already suggested solution. So only this one is not yet started. So as you can see, we are like almost at the end. So that's why I brought this topic. So I would suggest that we don't release like 1.0 immediately, but rather a release candidate. And then when we will do the release candidate, we'll just announce it, share with the community, so everyone can try it out, make sure everything works. And we would also, for example, we have our GitHub action where we use generator as a library, and the same with the generator we have in the AsyncAPI hub. So I think on our side would be to make sure that the release candidate is used in the GitHub action and the AsyncAPI hub. And so we can also confirm that as a library, everything works as expected and the features are not failing. So that would be my suggestion. Do you see any issues here? And I would suggest that the release candidate is If not at the end of this week, then for sure the next week I would create it.
Famous last words, right?
What?
Famous last words when you say it's going to be next week.
No, it's for sure that's next week.
So yeah, I think it's to me it's the right way to proceed, to have a release candidate first, because yeah. By the way, sorry for all these breaking changes that we've been doing on the generator during the last months, but you know, it wasn't even version 1 yet, and we had to iterate fast to reach to that point, right, where we have a stable version of the generator. And yeah, and for those who don't know so much about the generator, is we call them templates, like Łukasz said, but yeah, templates are code generators and documentation generators. So and it can actually be anything else, but mostly people use it for code and documentation generation. So, and when I say people, even ourselves, right? So yeah. And what I'm not sure, and I've been thinking a lot about it, is should can you go to the list of issues again? Yeah, the first one, maybe we should probably leave this one out. Like implement a way to generate classes or types from JSON schema definitions. It really depends. I mean, the thing is that if we can manage to make this feature, to add this feature in the future, without creating a breaking change, if we're sure that we can make it, then we don't have to include it as part of version 1 to make it stable. But yeah, it will be at least required to investigate if it's going to be a breaking change or not, right? So
the last time we talked about this issue, we said like that we will for sure do some like deeper investigation, how that could be done, just to make sure that it's not a breaking change in the future. So when I'm looking at this issue, I don't necessarily assume that I will implement like full-blown feature. It's rather like spend at least like 2 full days on research how this could be done and see, because I have different thoughts. Like even I was thinking about hooks maybe. So it just requires some investigation before we can actually say if it's breaking change or not.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just that if it's not a breaking change, we can postpone it and add it as, I don't know, in the future, near future for sure. We need to make sure that we have that that feature. But yeah, I mean, it's just so we make generator stable as soon as possible, and people don't see many breaking changes very often, right? So the library becomes more reliable, right? Not just it's just because of that. Otherwise, we will have to be releasing V2, V3, V4, right, very quickly, and that's okay. But yeah, it's gonna be a mess. Cool, man. So yeah, I mean, from my side, I don't know Jonas and Semen what they have to say, but they are the ones working the most on the generator. So, but from my side, this is along with you, of course, Łukasz.
So Jonas, Semen, anything against the plan of release candidate 1?
No, and about conditional files, I think it's better to consider whenever we need this feature currently, or replace it by hook, like in Spring template, because currently it's too complicated to use.
Yeah. So I'm I'm working on this bug, and I'm not really familiar with the feature too much, so I'm not sure yet if it's complicated to use or not. So let's see how it goes, and if it's really not really handy. Because at the end, I know that you have this hook in Java template, but I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you could just by configuration specify which files should not be generated instead of writing custom hook?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, it will be easy in configuration, but then it should be more easier way than it's now. Because now you should spend a lot of time to understand about JSON validation schema to use it.
Okay. Then let's see. I just started the investigation, so let's see how it goes. And we continue syncing on Slack, maybe. What to do next with it?
Yeah, just a quick note on the JSON schema class generation. I'm kind of waiting for it because I don't want to put too much effort into fixing the bugs that I have now with generating schemas. But yeah, I'm a little bit swamped with school as well, so it doesn't matter if it's like in a month or how long it's gonna take. But yeah, I'm kind of waiting on that for the Nets template.
Okay, so
If
no
there-
pressure.
This is Colin, if there's anything we can do to help with the Nets template, you know, certainly feel free to reach out. We're happy to help however we can.
Yeah, I remember. I also have some people that all already volunteered to test the pull request before merging the initial version, at least. But yeah, thanks. I'll remember.
Okay, awesome. So I will for sure consult with you, Jonas, when I will, work on this feature. Okay, so we are going with the release candidate release. Next one, quick. If you remember, I asked twice on Slack because on general channel we have like over 500 people, which is pretty a lot. But I made 2 tests asking people like if they follow all discussions or rather check from time to time, or just have the channel muted. Roughly 15 people, half real time seeing our messages, half just checking from time to time. And I was thinking, like, do you think, especially like you, Jonas, and Semen, because you're quite part of the community. So do you think if there's anything we should start thinking about changing in the setup of the Slack workspace? Like maybe granulate channels, or like we have, for example, with generator, maybe with other topics, or simply just leave it as it is? What's your opinion here?
I think we have not a lot of discussions in general or generator channel, so it's pretty easy to read it each day. And yeah, since not a lot of topic, it's for now doesn't require more details or more granular separation in topics from my point of view.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll agree. I'm not sure the capability of Slack. I haven't hosted a server yet. But eventually I would assume that we maybe need a template channel to separate the generator questions from the how to make templates. But yeah, that's it. That's kind of the only thing I have. Else, I like the setup.
I'm afraid that if we divide things in topics much more, then things will lose visibility, right? So the cool thing about general channel is that everyone is subscribed to general channel, right? You cannot unsubscribe from general, I guess. So, and we don't have too much noise there yet, right? Sometimes yes, sometimes in a day you might see like, I don't know, 10 or 20 messages, but some other days you only see 1 or 2 messages. So it's like, to me, it's still pretty decent. But yeah, regarding your questions and the fact that you only got 15 replies, or that's funny because it means that people are actually not reading the channel, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that the issue is actually there, like, what can we do to engage more the community, right? It's not so much, I guess, about how the channel or about the workspace, how the workspace is organized, but maybe the content we push there and the way people can subscribe to that content. Because right now we have the newsletter, but some people might not be interested in newsletter as well. Like, it's too much content. Will be great if we can have maybe on the blog or in the documentation some kind of atom subscriptions, something like this, so people can subscribe to new documentations or new blog posts or new new guides on how to do specific things that people might be interested in, more granular subscription controls, right? Like, imagine that you join Slack and you could have a button saying, don't notify me unless they're discussing about this topic. Like, of course, this is like a kind of magic because it's a free form chat, but yeah, and not on Slack, but maybe on other things that we can offer, like the blog, like the website with the documentation. I don't know, like even the newsletter that you might want to subscribe to specific topics only. I know that, for instance, InfoQ, the blog, I'm following InfoQ, and I usually receive the newsletter only for software architecture topics. I'm not interested in security or in testing or in any other stuff. So I only receive like a summary of what happened last week on the blog and all the blog posts related to software architecture. So maybe this could be another way that we can engage with the community so they actually get what they need. And yeah, but I think it would be great to ask everyone on the Slack channel using a type form or something. So we send everyone an email and with a type form survey, and we can survey them and see, because maybe some people just joined the channel because someday they were interested and they're not interested anymore, and they don't even have the channel open in their desktop app or web app or anything. They're just not signed in, so they don't even remember they have an account on the AsyncAPI workspace. And I know because it happens to me very frequently. so yeah.
Okay, so let's the best will be first to ask question to those that are muted. What's the reason?
Yeah.
Because as you said, like me as well, when I join few communities to engage for a second or check from time to time, I just mute, and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that it's not because we're screwing something with the way how the workspace works.
I think it's also because some people, and it's also the way I was using the Slack channel in the beginning. I was using the Slack channel to give support to people starting to use AsyncAPI. And so many people just join to ask some questions at certain point in time, and then they just quit. They sign out of the channel and of the workspace, and they don't see anything anymore. So, and because their intentions were just support, not really become part of an engaged community or anything, right? Just solve a specific problem at some point in time and then just continue with your stuff. So yeah, will be great to know how many of those are actually this kind of people, right? This kind of users would be great.
Okay, so the outcome, I'll just plan to prepare something with the how to communicate with them to get some answers if possible. And so that's it. And the next one is, yeah, our guests. So guys, you would probably like to do some demo. So you will have to have hosts, right? And which one of you needs it?
Maybe
So,
I'm gonna be the host and let Yacine have some words to introduce us.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. First of all, guys, thanks for the invitation. Yeah. Very glad to be and proud to be with you guys because I mean what you are building is pretty amazing, and we are, let's say, very happy about the new features we are working on. And on our side, just maybe to give you a little bit of background regarding us and Microx as a project. So this project has been started in 2015, and so we are working on it for quite a while. But really on a pure, let's say, open source way, which means and before you guys ask, we are both working for Red Hat, but this project is not related to Red Hat at all. That's a pure open source project, and it's something that which is, let's say, part of a passion today. And it's just working day and night on it, and especially during the weekend. So that's it. And so it's Microx is a pure open source project based on Kubernetes. I mean, it's Kubernetes native, fully dedicated to only one specific point, which is API mocking and testing. That's really what we are focusing on, because we think that it's a big pain for many users, and especially for big companies with which we have been able to chat for the latest decade. And our main goal is to turn API contract, collection, SOAP UI, and soon AsyncAPI into mock in a second. And our ultimate goal is really to speed up API development and secure lifecycle management. So that's what we are focusing on. So now I think, and what we are really interested in is just to, let's say, to do a short demo, a live demo of what we, I mean, the way we would like to support AsyncAPI within Microx, and grab some feedback from you guys. It's something which is part of our roadmap and backlog, and the more input and ideas, requests or whatever you come from you guys will be very helpful, so that we can integrate that for the next release, which should be AsyncAPI compatible. And just from a usage point of view, we are not only doing that for fun. This is also coming from a lot of users and integrator we are working with who are already using Microx and would like to use AsyncAPI for mocking big IoT project or projects which are using a huge amount of streaming requests and so on.
Yeah, sure. One of the first customer of Microx is indeed my former employer before joining Red Hat. I was working for a financial services firm that was deploying a huge SOA program. At that time, we do not speak yet about API, but we speak about web services. And that's where I got this idea about having a central platform, a central repository that was able to generate mock on demand and in seconds to allow the scale up to hundreds, billions of services or API throughout the organization. So as Yacine said, the goal of Microx is not to define a new specification, new format, is to reuse existing stuffs. So we started with SOAP UI projects, then we added Postman collections, then OpenAPI files. And the idea is to turn this artifact, to turn the example and the schema information into this artifact into live mocks. That is the first part. And the second part of the tool is about the testing, because once we have these artifacts with all the schemas of the examples, we can reuse everything, all these stuffs, to test implementation of the API and to ensure that they are compliant with the specification. So that is the second part of Microx, all the test and the compliance related part. Okay. So as you may have seen, we already support in Microx some different kind of API. So for example, in my repository, if you can see my screen, you may see that we have already loaded some REST APIs. We also have some kind of a dynamic API that is some kind of backend as a service API. And we are also able to load SOAP web services as well. And the next release will have a specific focus on AsyncAPI. So the idea is just to let the user compose, describe his API using your tools, using, for example, the playground. Okay, so here I have specified the simple API that is the user signed up API that consists in publishing an event, for example. And of course, you are able to define some schemas for the payload. And the specific part about Microx is to taking care about examples, about the real life samples that you may put into the specification as a companion to your schema information, so that you've got real life examples on how the API is expected to work. So right here, I have defined two examples, Laurent and John. And you just see that, and that is the reason of the pull request I have opened some weeks ago. I have used this formalism. You can specify the headers of the sample and the payload. So just use here JSON format or YAML format. Okay. And within these samples, you can also use some specific expression language that is supported by Microx that allows, for example, the generation of a random string or the generation of a timestamp using the now notation. So this is a notation that is already available for all the different kind of mockings. So you may reuse this and embed this expression within your SOAP UI project, Postman collection, or the AsyncAPI. So just download the result, and when going back to Microx, you can import the results. So there is different mean of importing stuffs in Microx. You can just say Microx, you have to listen to this Git repository, for example, and it will refresh the mock definitions, the samples, as long as you put new commit into your repository, or you can just upload. This is very convenient for local test. You can upload your contract file here. Oops. Right here. And once I have uploaded the contract file, you can see that Microx has discovered a new service, a new API. So I can now find into my API view, my catalog view, I can now find this user signed up API. That is an event API discovered from the AsyncAPI contract. and I can have the details of the channel of the operation of my mock. So I can just have here the different examples that were in my specification. What we plan to do is to support the different bindings in the specification. So for now, we only have focused on Kafka, that is configured as the default binding. So as soon as I have uploaded my definition, my Crocs has connected to the Kafka clusters it is configured with. Here is the endpoint, and it has created a new topic. So the name of the topic is based on the name of the API, the name of the channel, and the version of the API. And this topic can be used to retrieve mock messages that are regularly published by a macrox. Okay, by default, the frequency is 10 seconds, that is here, but it can be overridden to just fit with your use case. So, for example, here, when I'm using a default consumer that is provided with the Kafka broker, and if I'm listening to the topic of the API I just imported, I may start receiving new messages. So, yes, that's it. So you can see.
Sorry to interrupt, but we can only see your browser.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Cannot see your console.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to share. Just trying to share my terminal as well. So, getting back. So here you should see my terminal. Okay, so I have used the default Kafka consumer, and as soon as I have deployed my specification to my Crocs, I can start consuming message like there was a real implementation publishing messages on this topic. Okay. So basically, as I said before, right now we support a Kafka message broker, but the implementation right now is made to be extensible so that we can support some other type of bindings like MQTT or MQP, for example. So we plan to add these different bindings in the roadmap.
This is pretty cool. I love it.
So as you can see, you know that in big corporation, in big organization, having a mocking platform that is already up, that is already serving, that is always serving API in real time when the specification change, it's really crucial to be able to parallelize the different development teams to allow, for example, the mobile application or the consumer of an API to start working, even if the API implementation is not yet ready. So we allow the same kind of stuff with AsyncAPI. Okay, maybe I'm gonna get back to the browser sharing. Okay.
And by the way, maybe something we didn't show you guys as well is on the next release we're also planning to open what we name a Microx Hub, which going to be a sort of repository of all mocks ready to use for any type of usages. So that could be for open banking or any application. We're starting to build a pretty strong ecosystem, you know, with people like HashiCorp and some others who like to provide ready to use mocking for you, just for their own users or customers and so on, because that can really speed up, you know, the adoption of their solution. Because so far, those guys were, I mean, especially their customers, they were forced to install a full solution just for testing purpose.
Yeah.
That's very costly, not pretty agile, and they use a lot of resources for that. Thanks to the hub we're going to do, I mean, they can just enable and launch whatever they need on demand, and doesn't consume that much. It's all running on top of Kubernetes, and I mean, that's very easy.
Yeah. Yeah. As an example, we are starting working with, as I said before, financial services, and we have some samples for all the open banking related specifications. So importing them in Microx is as easy as activating an importer. Just because I want to get fast, yes, up, it has been imported. And getting back to my list of API and services, I can see that, hey, I've got a new mock here, and that is the open banking account transaction specifications with all the different operations from the specs being there, with the different samples coming from the spec, and allowing user to understand the spec and to play with it with real life samples. So Microx really, we want it to be a very easy way and convenient way to build sandboxes to play with API.
Yeah, so, and that's it. So back to AsyncAPI, just very happy to be, let's say, challenged by you guys or have a QA session to see what you think about it. If you guys think that it's something that may be interested for the AsyncAPI users and for the community. And last but not least, if there is any improvement, enhancement, or ideas you would like to share with us, going to be happy to think about it, of course.
Yeah, sure.
So I actually have one question is, it's only, the messages can only be triggered by frequency, like every X seconds, or is there any other way to trigger messages?
So right now for the first release, I think it will only be by frequency. One of the feature we have already discussed by other users is the ability to trigger the publication of a mock message with the invocation of a mock API endpoint. So basically what we'd like to do at the end was when you invoke the, for example, create user mock endpoint that is published, that is exposed by Microx, you end up with having a user signed up event published on the Kafka topic, for example, that is also managed by Microx. So I don't think this will be in the next release, but something we have in target.
That's actually an interesting feature. I was thinking on that, like most of people don't have only event-driven systems, but they have a mix, like REST or GraphQL with event-driven architecture, right? And I was thinking that it will be super useful that you post to /users, and then it injects a message in Kafka or AsyncAPI broker or whatever, right? That's pretty cool. I love it. The other thing that I had in mind while watching your demo yesterday is I see you're relying too much on the examples to generating the sample data, which is pretty cool, and I love it because it gives you the ability to have like custom examples, not just auto-generated and meaningful data, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But for instance, I think, I don't know if you're familiar with the extensions. It's the same as in OpenAPI extensions, those starting with X dash whatever on the spec. I think it would be cool if you could create something, you could create some extensions on AsyncAPI.
Yeah.
That, for instance, in my head is like x dash microx dash frequency, and then there you can tweak the frequency on the document itself. You can overload your configuration on the product, right? And same, for instance, with maybe then to customize how you build the topic name on Kafka, like you don't want to use this long string, right? But you want to use, I don't know, like something else as a prefix, right? And also for those who don't want to provide manual data on the examples, it will be also cool that you go field by field. Like for instance, in the ID, user ID, you specify x dash microx random string, right? And then you specify 32, whatever. I'm just imagining it, right? And then on the sent at, you specify that x dash microx now, right? Something like this. That would be super cool, because then you could then have the functionality that to generate like random information without having any examples, right? Because right now, if you rely on examples and people rely on the same document for documentation, they will see your syntax on their documentation, micro-specific syntax on their documentation, and some people might not like it, right? That's why I was thinking that this templating syntax could be moved to extensions, so documentation remains clean without any microx reference there, right? And I'm saying because today it's just microx, but tomorrow there's another tool that relies on examples, not for testing, but for something else, code generation maybe, and then there's a conflict, right?
Yeah.
So on how to specify the examples. So yeah, I think
that's a good point. Yeah.
I think that would be interesting to see. Ways to configure this, the bindings, the frequency, how to generate the mockup data.
Yeah. We've got also something specific, and I was thinking about extensions for that. It's what we call the dispatching rules, because once you import your specification artifact into Microx, we analyze, for example, requests and responses, and we infer matching rules. But you can override these matching rules so that you will be able, for example, let's say, to provide right here some kind of scripting. Here it is a Groovy script that will allow you to have matching rules that reflects, for example, different business rules. And I was just thinking about using a specification extension for these dispatching rules, but it will also a very good idea, as you say, to use it for a specification of random values in samples, for example. Yeah,
that's actually a pretty cool example. Yeah, that you can inject code to manipulate, for instance, the payload of the message. Yeah. And depending on the payload, you generate one kind of mockup or another, right?
Yeah. So this is something we already have. You can, for example, specify some part of a response of an API using some content provided within the request, so that you get a dynamic content generated. But yes, definitely, I think we should study how to do this using specification extension. Yeah.
One question from my side to this like notation that you use in the examples, like this now function or random. So is it something like specific for you, or it's a standard? Because I thought that you said it's a kind of standard. Or
no, it's not kind of standard. The template engine that is in Microx is specific for Microx, but
okay.
I use this notation with double mustached that we can find elsewhere. But this is the name of the functions, for example, random string now. This is something that is specific to Microx.
Okay.
Indeed, I was looking for something very lightweight, very performant, and did not find something great in what was existing. So
I wonder if the folks at Postman have something like this that they can open source maybe. Will be interesting to talk to them.
Yeah.
Because, and I think it's the same syntax, right?
Yes, it's very close. Yeah.
Very close. Yeah. So it would be great to talk to them and see if there could be a potential collaboration there.
But what I've seen in the Postman is for now this is implemented in Node.js, and basically Microx is mainly Java.
Mm-hmm.
We embed.
I meant more like, you know, following the same syntax,
Okay.
the standard way of doing it, and then this project could be maintained by all of us, right? Not just Microx or Postman. And then from this specification, you create Node.js implementations or Java implementations, right?
Okay.
Sounds like this is like a really long term, but I'm seeing like Łukasz was mentioning. To me, this is familiar. It's a familiar way of describing things, and I'm sure Microx and Postman are not the only ones using this syntax. I'm pretty sure. So it will be great to have some efforts on standardizing this syntax as well, outside the whole Microx or Postman efforts, or right. So
it's something which has been introduced in the latest release. And we didn't see any standard for that. So we tried to let's say, to select something which seemed to be pretty well known and common on multiple projects. And to tell you the truth, I mean, we have had a lot of conversation within the community for this new request, because at the beginning, we didn't want to generate any random stuff. We would like to force users to write their own and real example. But there's a lot of people within the community who said, no, I don't care about that. I'm just a developer. I would like to do it quick and dirty. I don't care. And it's gonna really help me. So that's why we honestly, we have created that. And it's due to the community and based on a lot of requests we receive on that. So the standard point is important. And then you're right, that's something we need to dig further.
Yeah, also doing it manually can be kind of painful for certain data types, like you know, datetime formats, which are so long.
Exactly.
And it's like every time I have to write one of those manually, for example, I go to Google and search, you know, or I go to the browser console and generate one, because it's too much, and it's stupid because it's actually pretty simple syntax, but it's super long and it's very error prone, and yeah, so yeah, I understand. By the way, I left a link on the chat to our extensions catalog. At some point, hopefully this year, we're gonna create an extensions catalog for AsyncAPI. So all the people creating extensions, those with XDAS, whatever, could be listing their extensions there on the catalog. Think about it like a public listing of all the extensions that you could use with AsyncAPI for different purposes. And it also allows you to define validation rules of your extension. Like it needs to be structured this way. So it's like kind of a mini spec only for your extension using JSON schema. And then next step will be to integrate this extension catalog with our parsers. So you can opt in. You can optionally check. You can optionally tell the parser to go grab the definition of these extensions and validate if the data defined inside the extensions it's correctly formatted and it's been correctly used. So right now the parser ignores everything that starts with X dash, so it's not validated. But we see some certain value on having some extensions that people can use. Like in this case, for instance, it would be great to have a set of extensions for microbes, or maybe even one. So where that you can define all these specific data for your mocking, and you can have our parser to validate that what people are writing on their AsyncAPI documents is actually microcs valid information and correctly structured. So yeah, and the release cycle will be different different than the spec. So you will control the release cycle of your extension. There is a bunch of ideas there on how to make it possible. It's just like a draft project. We're just starting, but it's pretty much, I will say, in the path to become a reality. So again, this is a kind of way to standardize custom stuff. So yeah, and just to make an example, one of the common extensions that people could find there is, you see that on AsyncAPI and OpenAPI, you have the info object with title, version, description, and then you have contact with email and all this stuff, right? So contact could also be extended with Twitter, for instance, right? Or something, or I don't know, or a link on Reddit or something for support. So these extensions could be useful for many people to reuse instead of everyone creating their own one. And yeah, and eventually, if it makes sense, they could be included into the main spec, right? So yeah, just want you to know about it.
Yeah.
A few minutes left, and I have two curious questions, like not related to AsyncAPI, but I'm from SAP. I worked in SAP before, and there was pretty really specific standard there, but it's an open specification. Do you have any requests, and are you going to support OData? Do you know anything?
Do not seem to have any request about supporting OData for now.
Okay, I was just curious, because we had to, like, when I was working in the previous project, we had to build our own mocking tool for OData because there was nothing. And so in case you're gonna think about it and will have requests, you can contact me. I know guys that developed it, and they can give you hints.
Okay, cool.
And technically, how does it, like, because you're running it on Kubernetes?
Yeah.
So you basically every API, what do? You basically generate an application that you spawn a pod for it, and that's it, or?
No, indeed, and that is something that allows also the scalability. There is no specific endpoint that is generated for an API mock. Everything is dynamic. So basically, when we deploy on Kubernetes, there is a bunch of pods, components for the different features of microcs. And we just have the autoscaler to manage the number of replica of the main microcs instance to allow to scale to tens, hundreds, millions of API.
by dynamic, you mean, okay, so you're, it's one application, but you just feed it with different spec and then
yeah,
it produces code.
so
Yeah, makes sense.
and basically we are using the operator deployment model to be able to easily deploy all the components within Microx, and also to change the topology of deployment depending on the load on different services on different endpoints. So basically, what we encompass is when there will be a lot of, for example, async API to simulate, the operator will be able to redistribute the load between different pods that will handle different publication of different API.
It has really been made to be highly scalable and to support a huge amount of requests.
Yeah. I was talking earlier about my experience in a large financial services firm, and we made experiences about deploying mock using a SOAP UI engine, for example. And at the end of the day, we realized that the infrastructure we have to set up for only the mocks was as huge as the infrastructure we had in production for the ESB. So really, it was not something that was scalable, and Microx was built from scratch from this experience to have something that will scale to billions, hundreds of hits without problem.
Awesome. So thanks a lot. I mean, I think it's already end of the meeting. So guys, awesome demo, and it was really cool to have you here and see the tool in action. Although I personally watched it before midnight yesterday instead of going to bed, I was watching the demo. But still, it was awesome to hear the technical details, especially for me. So thanks a lot for joining. Fran, do you want to add something at the end?
Not really much. I mean, thanks for joining us and doing this demo. And yeah, let us know if we can help anyway in the future, in the next days before you launch this. You wanted to test something or to review something, and we're happy to collaborate there.
Thanks a lot for having us, for giving us the opportunity to play the demo.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and we'll stay in touch in any case, because that's really something which is expected by some of our people within the Microx community. So happy to share and update regarding the latest news on the topic.
Awesome, sounds good.
Cool. Anything else? Anyone else wants to add something?
3, 2, 1. Thanks a lot, and see you in 2 weeks, but this time in 2 weeks, of course, in APEC friendly time.
Oh, yeah.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Hey guys. Bye.
Bye. Guys. Bye-bye.